Welcome, Comadres and friends. I'm Tess Tobin, the project manager for Comadres National Latino Book Club. The leadership team is pleased to have you join us for tonight's teleconference as we are beginning our 19th year. It has been our privilege to support Latine authors throughout these 19 years, and we look forward to many more years to come. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to readers following us on our live Twitter chat at Read Latino Lit. Tonight, please help us welcome authors Edgar Gomez and Isabella Santana. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping rules. Please keep yourselves on mute. You can keep your videos on. We suggest you put yourself on speaker mode, but gallery works just as well. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them. So let's start tonight with a little bit of our book history. Comadre Maria.
Welcome. My name is Maria Ferrer, and I am one of the book club membership coordinators. It's happy to welcome you today. Our book club began in July 2004 in New York City. After a brief pause, Nora Comstock reimagined and relaunched the book club nationwide. Her vision was to promote Latine authors, bringing our community into bookstores and supporting our writers. In October 2006, we began hosting teleconferences. And now in our 19th year, we continue to share works by Latine authors with book lovers everywhere. Our book club and teleconferences are designed to encourage everyone, not just Latinos, to read more Latine literature, explore diverse cultural perspectives, and gain deeper insights into Latine roots and heritage. We are creating a space where all readers can explore the rich inner works of Latine writers through their written word. We currently have book clubs in 12 cities in different time zones, and we invite you to join a local chapter that fits your schedule. And if your city doesn't have a book club, we invite you to open a book club. We will be happy to help you. So spread the word and invite others to join our literary community. Comadre Karen, take it away.
Welcome, comadres and friends, to our June 2025 Zoom teleconference. I'm Karen Gonzalez, Assistant Coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, Denver Comadres Book Club Facilitator, and co-founder of the Colorado Alliance of Latino Mentors and Authors. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our first interview is with Edgar Gomez, pronouns he, they, the author of High Risk Homosexual, which has received many awards, including an American Book Award and a Stonewall Israel Fishman Honor Award. Born and raised in Florida, Gomez has written for the Los Angeles Times, Poets and Writers, Lit Hub, New York Magazine, and beyond. His second book is Alligator Tears, a memoir in essays. His work has been supported by the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, and the Black Mountain Institute. Gomez lives in New York and Puerto Rico. Interviewing Edgar is Comadre Tess Tobin, the project manager for Las Comadres National Latino Book Club. She is the former president of Reforma, the National Association to promote library and information services to Latinos and the Spanish-speaking. She has been a proud member of the book club since 2007 and enjoys promoting the work of Latine authors. Take it away, Comadre Tess.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, Edgar. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here and to get to share this space with y'all. I already feel all the good vibes in the room. I have my Walter Mercado candle on. So I'm ready.
Very good. Why don't we start with you just telling us a little bit about Alligator Tears?
Sure. Yeah. Alligator Tears is a memoir. It's about growing up poor in Florida and just really believing in the American dream, and that if I just worked really hard, I could, claw my family out of poverty by any means possible. And then what happens when you realize that the American dream doesn't always work out the way we want it to? What do you do then? And instead of wallowing in despair, I try to find hope in things like activism and community and queerness.
Yeah, that's great. I really enjoyed reading your book. It is a little dark with some of the things that happened to you during your childhood, but your writing is excellent, and I really enjoy the self-reflection and also the tone. It's a little dark, like I said, but um, you're able to. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But you're able with give some humor to this, and also I felt there was hope, and like you said, I think it comes out in your writing, and I think it's a very good story. So how did it feel writing about these stories from your childhood in the book? How did it feel with the writing of it?
It was something that I felt I needed to do for myself. Um, I think so. I started writing this book in the towards the beginning of the pandemic, when I was living in Queens. And where I live in Queens, it's a big immigrant community, a lot of undocumented people. Um, and a lot of people that just reminded me of my relatives, that reminded me of my mom and uncles. And I just saw how the government was really letting them down and in fact kind of taking advantage. These are people that run the city basically. These are the tamale ladies, the restaurant workers, the essential workers. But none of them qualified for social services like food stamps or Medicaid or anything basic like that. Um, and I just saw how every day they would go out to work and risk their lives. And it got me thinking a lot about the American dream. It got me thinking about my mom, who at the time was working at Starbucks at the airport in Florida, and still had to go to work. And I basically was just asking myself, like, what is the point of this? To just work and work and work, and then like, where is this leading? And so it reminded me of growing up poor. And I was feeling a little bit depressed, but I was like, when I think about my childhood, it doesn't feel depressing. There was still a lot of joy there. There was still a lot of happiness, a lot of great memories. And so I wrote this book to remind myself what got me through those dark days to sort of help myself get through these dark days.
Right, I know, and I think you did a good job. Your first book, High Risk Homosexual, it received a lot of awards right off the bat, and so I was wondering how you felt about that, the feeling of success after coming through so much.
It feels unreal. I'd always, I did have confidence in my writing abilities, but I didn't necessarily have confidence in the world that they would see me or really care. And so it really did come as a surprise. Um, but at the same time, I could be really excited and I am, but also my friends, my community, they keep me humble. Like nobody around me really cares. But I do see it as a little bit of validation. Like, um, I spent 8 years writing that first book. I I really wasn't even sure if it was going to get published. When I was in graduate school working on this book, I just heard all of the statistics about, how unlikely it would be for somebody with my identity to publish a book. I mean, the statistics are only something like between I think it's like 6% of
Oh,
published books every year are written by uh, Latine authors. Um, Only like 10%, I think, by queer writers. And so I was sort of doing the math. I was like, well, I'm both this and this. And then when it is Latine authors, there's usually um, writers from like Mexico and Puerto Rico that we see in publishing, but not a lot of Central America. And I grew up very close to my Central American side. So I was just like, this isn't going to happen.
yeah.
So when it did, it was just like a big like wow moment that I think I'm still kind of processing it.
Um,
But I just feel very, very lucky and grateful.
Yeah, and Alligator Tears just came out this year, so who knows what's coming next, right?
Right. Yeah. Something that it taught me, the success of the first book was I think I had put like a cap on my dreams, you know. I wasn't allowing myself to dream big. And now that I know that, you know, it is possible to have success, I feel like I'm dreaming bigger, and I'm hoping that other people who are afraid to dream big can, you know, use at least the success of that book as an example of like, no, look, we can make it, and we can be taken seriously.
Yeah, and like you talk in your book about role models, there weren't too many role models out for you, but at least now you can be a role model. So that's a wonderful thing, I think. So that's great. Okay, so there's a lot in the book about identity and being queer, and the challenges, being queer within the Latino community. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges, and do you think it's changed, or how are we doing?
Well, yeah, a big part of both books is it has to do with growing up in a culture of machismo. And the machismo that I grew up in was like 300, it was like extra machismo. You know, my uncles from Nicaragua run cockfighting rings. It's a, you know, bloody, brutal sport that is dominated by men. Um, I just saw the way that my aunts were treated in these relationships, and how they were always expected to be silent and subservient. Um, and then there was me, who kind of didn't fit in anywhere. And like I said, like you said, I didn't have a lot of role models. I had a lot of models for how to be a man. You know, you have to be strong. You can't express your emotions. You can't, you know, wear pink. You can't wear makeup. You can't do so many things. And that never really felt that appealing to me. It always felt like, yes, they have all this power, but it's like they're just constantly like regulating themselves. And I was like, I don't really want that either. Um, and I kind of had to stumble my way and find role models in person. And you know, go to, you know, there aren't that many queer spaces. And so the places where I met other queer people were gay bars. And specifically in Orlando, where I grew up, at Post nightclub, where I would go every Saturday for Latin night. And it was just a place where I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with me. It was a place, not only did I not feel like I was wrong, but I also, on top of that, felt celebrated. And that was something that was really missing in my life. For a long time, I thought my queerness was just something that I kind of had to put up with and hope that other people would accept. And like my goal back then was just acceptance. But once I realized, like, it could be a good thing, it could be a privilege, it could be celebrated, and we can talk about, you know, all of the great things about being queer. That kind of unlocked something in me, and it felt very freeing. And it was something that I only felt in queer bars on Latin night. Yeah.
Right. Um, and once again, that your feeling of community is really what got you through. You felt like you said, you had people there, and that was a terrible thing. The American Library Association, we met in Orlando right after that, and we had a big moment of silence. 30,000 librarians. It was, our hearts were with you. I even get emotional too myself. I can't imagine how you felt. But anyway, so that's a good thing. Your community has really gotten you through. Are the groups that you worked with in Queens, are they still around? The Mira group and the food bank people? They sounded like a good crowd.
Yes. And that was so in the pandemic, you know, uh, this was New York. We were in lockdown. We weren't going anywhere. And so I felt very isolated from my community. And I was like, I miss being around other queer people. And so that's when I discovered, a couple blocks away from my apartment, there was the Love Wins food pantry, which is still around. And they were run out of a gay bar that was closed in the pandemic, and the gay bar basically lent them the space to run a free food pantry for the community. And it was very important that it was queer people there. And because there is a lot of homophobia and machismo in Latinx communities, we were showing them that it was queer people in our community's time of need that had shown up to feed everyone, right? And so it was uh, a form of activism, I think, on multiple levels. It was both feeding people and also rewriting the stories of what they think queer people are.
Right.
And yep, that food pantry is still going, and now they're in Harlem and Brooklyn and all over New York.
Oh, wow.
And then I was also part of the Mirror Trans Beauty Co-op, which is basically a group of trans women founded a beauty school for other trans women in the pandemic. And so they would get together and take classes to become beauty certified as makeup artists, just so that when the pandemic was over, they would have this other opportunity where they could, they didn't have to rely on things like sex work. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was just another opportunity. And I volunteered as a model. And so every other Tuesday, they would all come to our apartment because they didn't have a space yet. And so we had lent them our apartment, our living room. It was very DIY. And they would put us in full makeup and practice the skills that they were learning in the beauty school. So it was really fun, and it was a little bit of lightness in the dark.
Yeah, yeah. It was a great idea. I think that's great.
Yes.
Okay, we do have a lot of aspiring writers. I'm going to ask you a little bit about your writing process. You had mentioned it a little bit how your first book got published, but who was the publisher and how did you connect?
So my first publisher was Soft Skull Press. And basically, my book went out on submission, which means that my agent was trying to sell it at the very beginning of the pandemic when the publishing industry was just a mess. Just like the world was a mess. People didn't know if there was going to be a world in 2 months. And so publishing houses, which um, operate on these long schedules, um, they didn't know what was gonna happen. Um, and I got a lot of rejections. I got just no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And I got rejected by all of the big publishing houses. And it was eventually this smaller independent press that saw my story and saw value in it. And a part of me feels like, Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, when
Right.
she's like, goes back to the store and she's like, big mistake, huge. Um, that's how I feel with these publishers. They didn't see me, but this other press did. And, they got to be a part of my success story, I guess. And the way that I connected with that publisher was through my agent. My agent just sent my book out to different publishers. That's the job of the agent. Um, and yeah, she really worked hard behind the scenes to advocate for my story.
And how long did that take? A few years, or was it a long process? A waiting.
It took, so once the book is actually out on submission, it doesn't take too long. So I think probably like 2 or 3 months.
Oh, okay.
And every weekend she would write me saying, these people said no, these people said no. And after a while, I sort of just thought, you know what, whatever. The world is a mess. I'm like just focused on surviving. And so I sort of just put it in the back of my mind. And when the book actually sold, it did catch me by surprise. And I was like, oh, okay. And it came at just the right moment because, I didn't have a job in the pandemic. I wasn't going to work, and I needed money to survive.
Yeah.
And they didn't pay me a lot of money. But it was enough to just, get by a couple more months before I got another job. Yeah.
Yeah, it must have given you the confidence and, to know that, your writing was out there. And then how did Alligator Tears? I see you switch publishers. You went, Crown is part of Penguin. So how did that switch come about?
Yeah, oh my God, I was so intimidated at first because my current publisher, Crown, they publish the Obamas, they publish Bernie Sanders and Matthew McConaughey and all of these huge people. And so I was like, where do I fit into this lineup? Um, and the way that I sold the second book was I basically wrote 3 chapters of it and what is called a book proposal, which is this big marketing document where you talk about the book, the message of the book, who are all the people that you think are going to read it. You compare it to other popular books that are out. And so I put together this book proposal, and me and my agent sold it that way.
Oh,
And it was great because um, I basically got to work with an editor to finish it. Whereas with my first book, I pretty much wrote all of it independently without this editorial guidance.
mhm.
And then the second thing, if anybody's interested in writing a book proposal, you get paid to finish writing the book. And so that was really important because I, again, needed to survive. And so they gave me a check when I sold the book, a check when I turned in the final manuscript, and then another one when it was finally published. And so I got to make writing my full-time job during that time.
Right. So then you had only 6 months, but kiddingly.
Yeah, I had a lot less time, but the book proposal was almost like an outline that I could use to finish it.
Oh, good, good, good. Um, that brings me to, the title of the book is Alligator Tears, a memoir in essays. So
Mhm.
there's 10 essays in the book, but they're not traditional essays, they're not, a standard beginning, middle, end or something. But I love the way you put them together because they're like little stories. And then we're going into the next one. And it really moved along nicely. Was that a choice of yours to write like that?
Yeah, so I like to think of each chapter as like a self-contained episode. Um, each chapter tells its own little individual story, but they all do connect and tell a larger story.
Right,
And the
right.
larger story, I like to think of it as like a rags to riches story, except I don't get rich. But I redefine what a rich life means to me. And so all of the stories have to do with capitalism, with survival, with community, with like I said earlier, all of the things that I felt got me by those dark days. Um, and yeah, it was an intentional choice. I feel like growing up queer and Latine, I had to almost compartmentalize all of the different parts of my life. And like I had who I was when I was at home with my mom, then I had like my personality when I was at work, and I had my personality when I was at school, and I had my personality when I was with my friends. And these worlds very rarely crossed paths. Because I at that time I had put up all these walls and I felt like I needed to protect the all of the different parts of my life. And so when it came time to write each story, it just felt very natural that, in a chapter about I don't know, post nightclub, that I don't talk about my mom that much because she wasn't necessarily a big part of my queer life at that time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So the writing and do you write was I didn't read your first book yet, but was that written similarly? I mean, is that your style? What would you say is your writing style if we could say that?
I would say that is my writing style. And I also think I do that for the reader too. When I'm thinking about my reader, especially for this last book that has to do with, growing up poor, I'm thinking, maybe my reader is somebody who, has a job at the mall and only has like a 15-minute break. Um, I wrote these stories so that you can actually just finish a chapter on your break and then put it down, and maybe you don't pick it up again for another week, and then you can start a new story. And so I wrote it with my audience in mind.
Oh yeah, that's really nice. Um, so are you working on anything now? What are you doing?
I think I'm going to write another collection, but it'll be a little less memoir-y, and it'll be more just straight up essays. And I'm thinking it's gonna be called Gays with Guns. Because one of the essays that I'm thinking of putting in this collection has to do with when I lived in the LA area, I joined this gay gun group just because I wanted to see like why are these queer people interested in guns? It was right after the Post nightclub shooting, so I had assumed queer people would be anti-gun. And so I just spent time with that group to sort of, study them a little bit.
Oh, wow.
And I got a lot of good takeaways. And so I think that's what I want to title the book and have them be essays about survival, but funny essays, with a lot of humor in them.
Yeah. And that means, excuse me, I keep on losing my train of thought. I'm sorry. So that's it with the what you're doing now. And do you write every day? Is that part of something are you disciplined enough, or when does your moments of good thoughts come to you?
I would say I write every day, but it doesn't necessarily look like me sitting down at my desk and, hunching over my laptop. Right now, I am mostly in this, hunting and gathering stage where I'm trying to gather stories and also just read a lot and get inspired. And as I get inspired, I have my notes app on my phone that is just like a chaotic mess right now, but I'll just throw any idea in there. And I have like 4 different notebooks all over the place where I'll just scribble something down. And eventually, I'm going to, look at everything and figure out what's useful, what's valuable. So in that way, I'm writing, but I'm mostly spending a lot of time reading right now, which I think every writer needs to be reading.
Okay, what are you reading?
I'm reading a lot of fiction right now, and this is so not me, but I'm reading a lot of horror, which is something that I am usually way too squeamish to do. But I just read this great book by a Mexican writer from Ciudad de Mexico called Monstrilio, which is about a mother who loses her child. He passes away, and she cuts out a little bit of his lung and puts it in a jar and grows another child. Um, and it is so, so good. I recommend it to y'all. And it's not very like, it's not too gory. Um, yeah, but it's really
Say the author and the name of the book again.
the book is called Monstrilio, and the author, I believe his name is Gerardo Cordova.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're about to finish. Edgar, I'm so happy you joined us. Is there anything you want to leave us with, or anything you want to share with the community?
It's the last day of Pride, so
Yes.
I'll just say Happy Pride, y'all. I hope you had a special Pride and found something to celebrate and can hold on to that feeling for the rest of the year because Pride isn't just in June. It's our whole lives. Yeah.
That's very good. Well, Edgar, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And
Thank you so much, Tess.
best in everything. Take care of yourself.
You as well.
Okay, gracias, compadre y comadre. Our second interview is with Isabella Santana, a young poet from Los Angeles, California. She has been writing and performing poetry since 2020 and has received accolades at the regional and state levels. In 2024, she published her debut chapbook, Abuela Lore, with Somos en Escrito Press. Her poetry is also found in Somos Chicanas, 2024, Riot of Roses Press, multi-genre anthology of Chicana authors. Currently, she studies English and Latin American and Caribbean studies at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Interviewing Isabella is Comadre Nilda Diepa, an award-winning author, poet, speaker, and motivator. Her book, Alborada, a poetic memoir across cultures, won the Royal Palm Literary Award from the Florida Writers Association. The second enhanced edition was published as Alborada Dawn, a cross-cultural memoir in poetry. It received an honorable mention for the 2024 Juan Felipe Herrera Best Poetry Book Award in the One Author English category. Nilda is vice president of both Orlando Poets Association and the Florida Writers Foundation, which promotes literacy in the state of Florida. She led the Maitland Writers Group for 11 years and is launching her Word Sketches book coaching business in 2025. You can read more at www.nildadiepa.com. Take it away, Comadre Nilda.
Oh, hello, Isabella. I'm so excited to get to know you. And
Hi.
to see what makes you tick as a poet and activist. I hope you're doing good today.
Yes, I'm good. Thank you. I'm really excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm mostly just like excited.
Well, don't be nervous. You know, the first thing that caught my attention as I was preparing this interview was that somewhere you mentioned that you hope your words can change the world. And this grabbed me because it is something I value very much in my own work. It's something that I really strive for. And so we have something in common to begin with. That hope is related to what you wrote upon publishing your book. You said, in uncertain times, I'm always reminded of art's power. I find solace in art in all of its manifestations as a reminder that hope, beauty, and empathy still thrive in this world. Could you say more about especially the concept of Latina joy as resistance?
Yeah, I think this has definitely been a lot more in my mind, um, since especially living in Los Angeles, the immigration raids started. Um, something that I wrote a poem about being like one of the lucky ones because I was born a citizen, and a very it's very it's a different kind of pain seeing people that look like you, that could be you if the cards didn't fall the right way. Um, and so, when all this was happening, even before, like, since like November, I would be on my phone for hours and hours and hours, and I would get stuck like scrolling, and it would make me so anxious and so sick. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't want this to be me anymore. And I always think that that's the point, to make you so scared that you don't want to do anything or change the world. So I see joy in art as like my way to combat that. The world can be falling apart, but at least I can, go have a dinner. I can go eat dinner with my parents and we can laugh and, watch a silly movie. Or I can still call my grandma up and, tell her about the Dodgers, things like that. So it's just like the little moments of joy I want to hold on to as much as I can because um, I want to challenge the narrative of, pain and fear, um, because I think it can get really overwhelming.
Yeah. Would you share your poem about the lucky ones?
Yeah. Okay, I have it right here. It's the lucky ones. It's a different kind of pain being one of the lucky ones. Born a citizen to immigrant parents. It's different. Being a daughter whose father pleaded his case in court, facing a judge who maybe was feeling generous that day, or maybe liked that my dad was light-skinned and gave his long expired visa another chance. You know, my grandfather crossed the river. He entered this country in the trunk of a car. I remember when my mom got her citizenship. I remember those little American flags and the rusting vase that housed them. I remind myself, you're a citizen because your parents worked hard, because your parents sacrificed so much, because your parents got lucky. See, this is what they don't tell you. They'll tell you to do it the right way, to do it legally. Of course they say that. On TV, I see scared brown eyes. Don't worry, they say. You're a citizen. But they don't know. I'm one of the lucky ones. So,
It is beautiful. I mean, it really touched my heart. Oh, so powerful. Well, I'm old enough to be your abuelita. Abuela Lore is a love letter to your abuelas. And you have said that both Chica and Mami Yolis always told us stories of their youth. And
yes.
you grew up with so much respect for all the heartbreak they endured. What can you tell us about how those stories helped you grow up into the kind of person you are today?
Yeah, I think especially hearing from from Chica, she was one of 21 siblings, and her mother died when she was really young. Oh no, her father died when she was really young, and her mother lost herself after her father died. So very early on, she was taking care of the younger kids, and she was off on her own at like 13 trying to work. So hearing those stories really made me appreciate what I had, and how lucky, or not how lucky, but how like it really made me grateful to all the hard work and all the sacrifices that so many people went through so that I could have the life that I have. I think it also, both my grandmothers are very religious, so I also grew up um, really trying to take that in. And my grandmother has always said that I'm very spiritual, and I think I do really get that from her, especially when she would just tell me about how prayer saved her, because she went through so many horrible things when she was a little girl, and that's what got her through it, like having that hope. And I just learned to see beauty in the world, especially with Chica, since she lived with us growing up. And I remember, we would go water the garden, and we had we had a big tree in the front yard that we would take care of, and things like that really made me more attuned to like the natural world, and really made me grow an appreciation for the world and try to see the beauty in everyone. Um, and I think Yolis is someone who always reminds me that life is too short to to hold back on having fun. She's a very fun woman. She's a very fearless woman. And, when you're little, I was like, oh my gosh, you're so embarrassing. But now that I'm grown up, I'm like, oh, she's so cool. Like she goes and walks like 2 miles every single day. I don't even do that. So it's just things like that that really make me look up to them. And I really see them as my role models.
Oh, that's very sweet. I would be so moved if one of my grandchildren felt about me the way you feel about your abuelas. But we rarely have the time to sit down and tell stories. So what do
Yeah.
you think happens in a family where the elders cannot share their life experiences with their next generation?
I never realized how lucky I got with being able to have like multi-generations, growing up with multi-generations. Um, I think there is a disconnect often when there's not like the mixing of the generations. And I think you lose a part of yourself too when those stories die with you, or die with the older generations passing on. Um, and I think it's part of who I am, it's part of my history. Um, my like my grandfather, according to my dad, I am very like I am similar to my grandfather because I'm a very like tidbit person. I like giving fun facts. And apparently he was like that. So it's just like things like that. Like these people are part of me. Um and it's just, I feel like there's a little bit of connection that even though, for example, my grandfather, he lives in Ecuador. I haven't seen him in many years, but there is still that connection that I can be reminded of, that when my dad's like, "Oh, you're just like you remind me of my dad. He used to do stuff like that."
Mhm.
Um, and it's just the way I can keep all these people and all their stories close to my heart.
So I guess you're saying that not just the stories, but also the little bit of relationship time that you have, even if it's not directly with them, but through the stories that your parents tell you about them, then that's part of what
Yeah.
what helps you become who you are.
Yeah, it's also a way of meeting people that I've never met.
Mm.
On my maternal side, my grandfather passed away when I was really young. I think we were 3, so I never got to meet him. But one of my sisters has a lot of his characters. He was a musician. She's a musician. So, she learned to play the piano on his old keyboard that he used to use. So things like that, like I get to learn about this person who I never got to meet through the stories that my mom and my aunt and my dad get to tell. about my grandfather, and it's a way of just getting to meet these people and kind of know a little bit about who they are.
Mm, that's great. In your poetry, you talk about machismo, migration, family love, and a lot more stuff. How have your abuelas influenced the way you talk about these themes?
I think one of the things that they've definitely giving me, or they one of the things they've taught me is having grace. When I was younger, I think I had a lot of anger about some of the things I saw and witnessed growing up. And there's still anger, but they always remind me, at least, Chica always tells me that holding grudges makes your heart like se pudre el corazón. It rots your heart. And so that's something that I've kept reminding myself, that there is anger and there is pain, but also reminding myself that in this pain, especially with the machismo that my abuelas face, they still found so much love and so much life through their own ways. I mean, my mami Olis is the most lively person you'll ever meet. She lights up a room. When I would go visit her in Ecuador, we could not go shopping with her because we would get stopped by all her friends. And they'd say, "Oh, hello." And I'd be like, "Who's this person?" So just even with all the barriers that she faced, like she still found her ways to create her community and grow her family and still live a life full of so much happiness and joy. So those are the attitudes I try to bring to my work.
That's wonderful. So you have found more success as a poet by 20 years of age than many other poets achieve in their lifetimes. What can you tell us about representation as power and what it means to a young author?
Yeah. I turned 21 very recently, like 2 weeks ago. But I would say I definitely feel in all the spaces that I go, I tend to feel like quite a bit of imposter syndrome because one is like I'm so young. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like I don't have, publications at like big presses, or I don't have all these like accolades, and it gets scary sometimes. And it was very recently that someone told me like I look up to you, and I was like taken aback. I was like, what do you mean? I could not believe that someone actually like saw me as their inspiration. But when you hear stuff like that, it really gives me more passion for what I do. Um, because I think especially growing up, I didn't see a lot of like authors or even just successful Latinos that were not, like soccer players or working at the business level. I never saw that sort of representation. So, like having that representation of someone who can say, "Hey, you can write your book too. You can go out in the world and do these things and meet your people." I think that's really important. Um, I want the community to keep on growing and to keep on moving up in any way we can. So for me, it's important to kind of carry that. Like it's important to know that I have this responsibility to uplift people as much as I can and remind people that their stories are already within them. They have their stories, and to not be afraid to put them in the world. It's just hard it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Um, but still, I feel like everyone has their stories already in them. It's just a matter of trying to get it out on paper.
Well, I congratulate you for striving to get beyond your imposter syndrome, because I don't think I have outgrown my own imposter syndrome. Uh, I still struggle with it. But I've noticed that in the Florida State Poets Association and the Orlando Poets Association, we don't have a whole lot of young people. And what do you think an older person like me could do to attract more poets to join our organizations?
Um, I would say go to the schools. A lot of the poetry little groups that I started at school. that's where I kind of first started getting into poetry. We had like we had little mini writing competitions. And there's actually a big network of from like K to 12. There's a huge world of like high school and middle school poetry. There's a huge world of it. I was shocked because when I started or trying to get into publishing when I was 16, there's all these presses that cater specifically to teenagers or students in school, and there's awards that are specifically for students and for people, children under the age of 18. Um, but that all really starts with the schools. That's the audience. Um, and that's where I got my start in the K through 12 programs. And from there, I kept it up through into adulthood.
That's great. That's a great suggestion. So you've also had the privilege of spending time with Dolores Huerta, who's a renowned American labor leader and feminine activist. And you have said that the experience taught you that there's always hope to make the world a better place, as long as there are people who are willing to create, organize, and fight for a better world. So how has Huerta influenced your life?
When I meeting Dolores Huerta is something I'm never going to forget that. I still cannot believe that I got to meet her. I got to perform a poem in front of her. It was the most surreal day of my life. And I got to hold her hand and she talked to me about, she told me, I'm old, I'm 94 or 95. I'm putting the torch to you guys. You guys are the future. You guys are our hope. And just hearing that from someone that I learned and read about growing up really, like, really moved me and reminded me that, the youth is the hope. I know that this generation of, you know, kids, they're gonna be there's the hope. I have hope for them, for us. Um, and I think that it's very easy to lose hope when you get stuck looking at, headlines and all this chatter in the world, and having that moment to take myself out of it and be with her, where she's told me that I'm passing the torch to you, your generation. You guys are our hope. Really was the moment where I reminded myself that the fight's never over. People will always be um, looking for a better world. People always will be hoping for better things, and it's not even a matter of getting more people to believe in your cause, because there's always people out there that believe in your cause. It's more of um a matter of finding them and finding that community.
So how do the politics of rest apply to immigrant families and first, second generation Americans?
Yeah, so this is something that came on my mind because I say this is my summer of rest and relaxation. I haven't been working. I'm not working like a wage job. I've been, cleaning houses and dog sitting and things like that, but I haven't been on like a strict schedule of work. I was, I went on a nice vacation with my family. Um, and I'm doing what my dad says. I'm doing nothing. And it's been very hard to be doing nothing, but I call it like the immigrant kid mindset is for me, I never thought that it was okay to just do nothing. From a very young age, it was clear to me that I had to work hard to succeed because that's what my parents did. That's what I saw. And I've been working at it for as long as I can remember. And I never thought that like, oh, I thought it was lazy to do things like take a nap or take a break or stuff like that. Just didn't cross my head that that was something that was essential to me to do. Um, and it definitely comes from, my parents, like kind of the trauma of them having to work full-time jobs and go to school, work full-time jobs, both of them, both working parents, and have to take care of kids and have to raise a family. And when you're an immigrant kid, seeing your parents do that, it's like, okay, let's get this going, let's work. And while I was in my first years of college, I took pretty heavy course load, and I was working, and I was publishing my book, and it was this go, 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 go. I was running for like achievements and doing as much as I could. And there was a moment where I had to just tell myself, like, I cannot do this anymore. I started getting pretty sick. Because I wasn't sleeping well. And I had to sit back and be like, I need a month, 2 months, I don't know how long. I need my time to do nothing. I need some time to get away from school, get away from looking for jobs, get away from looking for internships, and just slow down and enjoy the moments that I have still as, being young. Enjoy the sun, enjoy, the breeze. Just enjoy those little things that sometimes get lost when it's that constant hustle, that constant going forward.
That's excellent that you are learning to take care of yourself, because rest is the most important thing for the brain to be productive. And if you want to be creative later on, you need to have your resting time. I don't know if we have time for you to read another poem from your book.
Oh, it's okay. But I do want to show my book off because I'm very proud of it.
Well,
This is Abuela Lore, this is my cover. This is my grandmother's. This is a family heirloom. I am second in line to inherit the Virgencita. She sewed all the clothes for the Virgencita. Me and my sister went to her apartment and we took a photo we took a photo of it, and she helped me make it fit the cover. I'm very proud of my little book. So it's like my little baby. And it started as a school project. It started like this. Um, it's bound in cardboard. My dad like punched thread through it to bind it. And I'm, when I open the book and I get to read it, which I do from time to time, I just remind myself that there's so many people that are inside these pages, not just like literally like I wrote them down, but physically in the actual construction and design and process of creating it.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. You know that Brenda Vaca has said that the words of your pen, much like the volcano of Tungurahua, Ecuador, and the movements of the 1976 terremoto in Guatemala, spit fire and shift earth. So I want to thank you tonight for shifting the earth around our feet. Your presence is beautiful, and you're so wise for your age. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And mil gracias to authors Edgar Gomez and Isabella Marie Santana. And if you didn't know, Isabella is a triplet. Can you imagine? Her poor parents, God bless them. So thank you again for being here tonight. And we want to express our heartfelt gratitude to their publishers, Crown Publishing Group and Somos en Escrito Press, for generously donating books to our early registrants. Special thanks to our incredible interviewers, Comadre Tess Tobin and Nilda Diepa. We appreciate our audience for joining us tonight and submitting thoughtful questions. Most importantly, we want to recognize our dedicated volunteers, without whom this book club and its associated work would not be possible. Mil gracias. Supporting Latine authors is crucial to our mission. We encourage you to write reviews on platforms like Amazon, Goodreads, and Barnes & Nobles, as those reviews significantly impact publishers and potential readers. Consider purchasing books directly to support our authors. And if local library lacks a title you're interested in, do request it. We invite you to attend our virtual local book club meetings and bring friends along. Remember that our book club is open to men, women, Latinos, and non-Latinos. All are welcome. Looking ahead, our July 2025 books are Brother Bronte, a novel by Fernando Flores, and Mali Nali by Veronica Chapa. Thank you again for your continued support of Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. Please join us in celebrating by buying books and supporting Latino authors. Let's applaud and amplify diverse literary voices throughout the year. Good night. Always read Latino Lit, and happy Pride Month and year. Thank you all. Have a good night.